Alright, so today we're looking at the First Crusade, but the thing about most historical events is that you can't really start at the event. You have to look at the things leading up to it, such as the theology of the Western Church leading up to this, where people believed that military service could be an act of penance when directed against Pope Gregory VII's opponents in the investiture controversy. Now, this crusade was the culmination of an ideological shift from warfare as a reason to do penance to now warfare being penance. So this idea of violence as an expression of piety was a new development and requires some explanation as to how it came about. So today we're going to first look at 6 strands of thought that contributed to the idea of the Crusades. 1, for a long time Christians did not like fighting at all because they thought it was immoral, but as soon as you get a Christian empire, a lot of them are like, whoa, hey, fighting for Christian ideals, that's kind of like fighting demons. So yeah, they were cool with that. 2, for a long time, under Charlemagne at least, only imperial rulers could issue just warfare, but over time you get this kind of devolution of that until eventually, around the time of the Crusades, any old noble guy can be like, hey, go fight, and they're like, okay. 3, and this one's either hypocritical or at least downright hilarious. The fact of the matter is, Muslims for a long time had been preaching that Allah is like, hey, go fight for me and you get paradise. So now Christians get this kind of similar mentality where Jesus is like, hey, fight for me and you get penance for sins. So one way or another, you find Christians are like fighting for Jesus now. 4, the practice of pilgrimage was already really common, and originally people didn't even bring weapons to Jerusalem, but then because of hostile environments, they started bringing weapons in, so this eventually became a perfect doorway to just start moving your soldiers in through pilgrimage. 5, because the schism between the East and West was still fresh in everyone's minds, the West saw this as an opportunity to help the East out, since they were technically in Jerusalem there. And 6, the preaching of the crusade. You see, in 1095, Pope Urban II had finally had enough, and he, at a council in Clermont, said, guys, we're going to war. And the resounding reply was, Deus le vult, God wills it. See, Christians now started to mimic this old Roman ideal from Horace that dulce et decorum est pro patria mori, it is sweet and proper to die for one's country. They kind of just changed this to die for one's God. So Urban eventually, even to get more promotion for this, started issuing kind of a remission of sins for anyone that wanted to fight. And so he wasn't saying, you get to heaven, you go to heaven, you go to heaven, but he was basically saying, your temporal punishments for your sins here, they're gone if you go fight. So the Crusaders had convictions to go, some selfish, some noble. Altogether, though, these 6 things are the ones that led everyone to find themselves in a crazy war. Now, it's really important to know that the Pope preached the crusade, but he didn't have very much control over it. It was actually knights that did most of the field oversight and ordering. The main body of crusaders was formed in 1096, and the leaders were Godfrey of Bouillon, the Duke of Lorraine, Baldwin of Boulogne, or something like that, some baloney like that, Bishop Admehar of Lupoy, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bohemond. Now for a few political facts that capture not really the fighting, but more the political scene surrounding it. At Constantinople, Crusaders pledged allegiance to Emperor Alexius. Disunity among Muslims caused success of that First Crusade. Jerusalem finally fell in 1099, ending that kind of First Crusade. Now, also there was criticism from an Arab chronicler who said all those who were well informed about the Franks saw them as beasts superior in courage and fighting ardor, but in nothing else. Just as animals are superior in strength and aggression. Now get this, there was chivalrous conduct in both sides. They were brutal against each other when they're fighting, but they actually fought pretty clean comparatively. Now for a brief pause on the information, for your convenience, there is a map placed to look at of the First Crusade. But now back to the good stuff. There was a theological aspect of reunion within Christianity. There was an effort at reconciliation with the Greek Church through this First Crusade because they had a council in 1098 at Bari in southeast Italy. Now the council addressed the addition of filioque, the add-on that kind of pissed them off for a while, in the Nicene Creed, and some differences in practice of the Eucharist were addressed, but ironically enough, authority of Pope was not really talked about. Now, this could have been the capstone of the First Crusade, but the Eastern Empire thought the Crusaders were out of hand, so it didn't actually help that much. Alright, now we're going to end this tutorial with 12 effects of the Crusades. Further alienation of the East and the West. Obvious alienation between Christians and Muslims. Coptic Christians in Egypt were persecuted for possibly supporting the Christian Crusaders. The weakening of the Byzantine Empire and hastening of its fall. Establishment of Eastern Latin states, Edessa, Principality of Antioch, Tripoli, and Jerusalem. Rise of knightly monastic orders, namely the Knights Templar. Coalescence of the idea of fighting demons and military goals. As military missions became dominant, smaller, benevolent orders also arose. Ironically enough, more trade between Christians and Muslims. Unity and peace in the West as they fought a common enemy. A broken Jerusalem. Scholasticism. Okay, bye.